Good evening. The history of Bangladesh continues to be rewritten. In 1971, a fresh chapter of Bangladesh history was written, and about a month back, a new chapter in the history of Bangladesh was once more written with the ouster of Sheikh Hasina from power, with one more student agitation leading to the regime change. It was in 1969 to 1971 when students' agitation in Dhaka, particularly, led to the mounting of a movement for the creation of a new country, independent Bangladesh. I am joined by Ambassador Shashank, India's former Foreign Secretary, who talk about the issue happening in Bangladesh, and also by Mr. Pankaj P. Singh, the editor of the browser, who has come out with the accounts of a Pakistani major, Siddiq Salim, in his book Witness to Surrender, in which he has given candid accounts of the incidents which took place between 1969 to leading up the creation of Bangladesh. A very warm welcome to both of you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank you so
much
much.
indeed.
And Mr. Shashank, to begin with you right away, what I would like to ask you is that what happens to Bangla nationalism, uh, which led to the creation of Bangladesh in 1971?
If you recall that before 71, there were cyclonic storms in Bangladesh, and a lot of international assistance was given to Pakistan, but very little of it was transferred to what is now Bangladesh. And so there was a great amount of feeling of being left out among the people in East Pakistan at that time. They felt that they had been taken advantage of because they all thought that what had happened in Calcutta, 1946, in the direct action, they were responsible in a way, in a very major way, for the creation of Pakistan. And here they were being left out of all the international assistance that was coming. So it had been going on for a very long time. And as and when in the past also there had been any bilateral conflict, Pakistan had bothered only about the West Pakistan territory. They never bothered anything about the eastern part. So that was only as a means of collecting international assistance, number one. And secondly, to be able to give pinpricks to India on the uh, eastern side by using all the resources that ISI or the Pakistan Army could command uh, to trouble India. Because they felt at that time, as you remember, that Jinnah had felt that it was a moth-eaten Pakistan that was created because they were hoping that Gandhi and Nehru would ultimately agree to some kind of a corridor through India, and also some of the important states like Bhopal and Hyderabad and Jodhpur, they would be able to get independence from India, and then India would be moth-eaten rather than Pakistan. So therefore, he kept repeating about moth-eaten Pakistan. That was because he felt that Sardar Patel did something wrong, in uniting India as one whole. And he had thought that Gandhi and Nehru would have been much better if they had taken control. Then the whole country would have been split into small parts. So anyway, so this is the past and linked with the 1971 events which took place. And even Sheikh Mujib-ur-Rehman, who was supposed to be a sheikh, an Islamic scholar, and in many ways, very fundamentalist. He was a student leader more for Islam than for Bengali culture. It was only later on when the Bengali people felt that they were being discriminated against, they were being treated like, and in fact, many of the West Pakistanis, even if in personal discussions, I remember, they would say, look, I mean, these people really are not from the proper race. So we have to improve their race. And so that was a very genuine feeling among the West Pakistani army and many others. And that was one of the reasons why these fellows did whatever they committed atrocities on women, particularly in Bangladesh. And I have spoken to several Indian military retired officials who were uh, in the operations, and they could say that, look, I mean, in fact, the Pakistani soldiers, they wanted to show how much they were able to gain, how many victories they had made over the women of Bangladesh rather than over Bangladesh as such. So these are the situations that now all that is forgotten. And if you remember that what happened in 1975, uh, government of India had tried to convey through its channels to Sheikh Mujib that his life was perhaps in danger and he should do something about it. But he never believed in that, and he thought that they were all his children. And he was so popular in Bangladesh, even though what had happened is that soon after Bangladesh's independence and even during the struggle, most of the elements who were constantly, let's say, cultural uh, type people who wanted to promote Bengali culture, or those who were belonging to a more egalitarian kind of a socialist type of a, who felt that Islam should be equated more with socialism than with religious fundamentalism, with elitism. And so they were the ones who were killed off immediately at that time. And most of the intellectuals from Dhaka University, many of the good students were removed. But somehow or the other, I find that what happened recently is a repeat in some ways of what Sheikh Mujib had felt. So, is that something uh, that our friends in Bangladesh, they're taken more by whatever people say on the face value rather than actually go on the basis of deeper into the feelings uh, as to the inner feelings of the people and those who are really opposed to them. I remember that, let's say, about 22, 23 years ago, when I had little bit of occasion to deal with Bangladesh, I found that uh, Sheikh Hasina ji was very uh, initially very reluctant to take any pro-Indian position because she said, "Look, if I take any pro-Indian position because you people had helped us in Bangladesh creation, I will be totally isolated within Bangladesh, and the Jamaat-e-Islami and the BNP they will take advantage of it, and they will put together all these people against me." But I think, as you remember, that later on there were attacks on many political assemblies, and there were attempts made to kill many important people, members of the Awami League, including Sheikh Hasina herself. So I think a stage came when they realized that there was no meeting ground, and they had to take radical position if they wanted to survive in the very dangerous firmament, political firmament in Bangladesh. So this is what has been happening so far. Now, I can come little later if you ask me, or if we get Pankaj also involved as to what
Yes,
happened. They
definitely,
found
sir.
that China and USA got involved in Bangladesh in a very major way, and so it became a battleground for two very major powers, and these people suffered.
Correct, sir. Mr. Singh has published this book by Siddiq Salik, and it's a very he gives a very candid account of the happenings, and he also admits that Mujib's main grievance was that 70% of the revenue in Pakistan was being generated from the East Pakistan, while the region was getting far less in allocations. Mr. Singh, what made you to publish the book, and what would you like Mr. Shashank to reflect upon?
Sure. The book, I was very intrigued when I happened to chance upon this manuscript. And it was by accident because someone was looking for this book. Someone asked me to find out if I can get this. And while researching, I found that it hadn't been published in India. So, and when I looked at the availability of rights, I found that it was in open source. So I thought here is a great opportunity to bring this book to the people. And and it so happened that the events in Bangladesh just occurred while we were in the process of publishing books. So that was just a fortuitous coincidence. But yeah, it came at the right time when we really need to understand Bangladesh's history because in context of the current events. So the question I wanted to ask you was that the way the events played out in 70s, 71, 75, like you mentioned them, at that time Bangladesh was a very poor country, and it was of course dependent on India for a lot of resources, which it has been being having. We have the longest international border with Bangladesh, and on three sides we surround Bangladesh in all respects except for the sea access which they have. And but today Bangladesh's economy is in a very strong position. The political events have cast some shadow over them, but still the economy remains where it is. And the aspirations of the people are very different today from what they were in the 70s. So, and India's security context is greatly affected by Bangladesh. Northeast is so politically sensitive. You have the events in Manipur playing out. You have China as a big presence in that area. And China has been very quick to take advantage of the Sri Lankan situation when the Sri Lankan economy went down, and China was very quick to step in with aid, and they've taken a port there, and as a security umbrella, they're building their resources in that area. So, how do you see Bangladesh panning out if, under the current circumstances where they are not economically dependent on India the way they were in the 70s?
Yeah, you are very right. Uh, they are no longer dependent to that extent. And China, which has deep pockets, if it decides to help Bangladesh with huge amount of resources, it can do that. It depends whether China will do it or not, because China knows that ultimately it is not India that they would be working against in this region, though India will suffer also.
Sure.
Uh, but it will be USA, because USA would never allow. And to the extent, if we take into account what Sheikh Hasina said, that maybe somebody was involved in saying that, look, they would like to put some bases in some territories of Bangladesh in order to protect their responsibilities in this area. So therefore, that is one issue we have to keep in mind, that if the local governments are not being responsible enough in the light of the superpower struggle, then they may suffer. And as we have seen that Bangladesh has suffered earlier, Sri Lanka suffered, Pakistan suffered, because they tried to go too close to one superpower, which is still an emerging superpower. But maybe by 2049, they will become number one power in the world. But right now, they are still the underdog. So therefore, to go that far, that is one where you have to be careful. And that applies to India also. Secondly, uh, my impression is that in Bangladesh, there were very few people who were sympathetic to promoting economic opportunities along with India. By and large, the greater feeling, especially among the non-Awami League parties, and even within Awami League, there were factions which felt that India should be kept under pressure, because India always delivers more when you put India under pressure and India under threat. And therefore, many of the northeastern uh, people working against Indian unity, they had taken shelter in Bangladesh, not in East Pakistan, but even in Bangladesh, and they had made commercial firms and industries in partnership with many important people of Bangladesh. So I will not take the names here, but they were so important that one could not touch them very easily. And even when India tried to offer the kind of power links, uh, oil supplies, gas supplies, many other kind of arrangements, setting up fertilizer factories, etc., they preferred not to accept them and say that no, we would prefer to keep you under pressure by having your uh, extreme anti-Indian nationals working in Bangladesh against you, because that is much better for us. And that is mainly because, within India, we have had cases, whether Kashmir or many other parts, that wherever there are insurgencies, the Indian state has put tremendous amount of resources in those states, simply because they feel that that is the only way to deal with insurgencies in different parts of India. That is by putting a lot of money in the hands of various people who say that they will play both sides, or they will try to curb the insurgency. So this is one another second problem which will continue to uh, plague us in the case of Bangladesh. The third, of course, is that Bangladesh now has to pay up for whatever they have been getting from India or from other countries in the last several years. And though they might say, okay, we will declare bankruptcy, or we will not go to you, we'll go to IMF or to some other party. So I think India will have to therefore keep in mind that they have to work with China, with Russia, with America, with IMF and World Bank to ensure that for proper accountability of investments which have been made in the past, money has to be paid back. And I'm quite sure that the Western democracies will never accept anything else but for the repayment of the money which has been owed to Indian private sector and etc. Because they are all for private sector in their own countries also. And I remember uh, my involvement with Uganda some time ago when Uganda went to World Bank for funding. World Bank told them very clearly, please pay back all the Indian private businessmen whose properties were nationalized. Only then, once we receive from the Indian government and the Indian people who lost their properties, that they have got satisfactory reply from you, that we would be willing to give you some money. So I think these are the past incidents. We should take advantage of that, put pressure on the international institutions and the other donors, large donors of Bangladesh or those who have invested money, that they should not allow Bangladesh to behave irresponsibly, either to promote insurgencies in India or in other countries, or to lead to the irresponsible behavior against their own people, which we are now finding that the minority communities, especially Hindus, they are suffering very badly, and they are being treated shabbily. What is happening in Pakistan perhaps is only a small thing. Bangladesh is doing much more.
To this, Ambassador Shashank, I would like to draw your attention to a few of the videos doing rounds, and a couple of them I shared with you on the WhatsApp about the Taliban kind of behavior by the student activists in Cox's Bazar beaches, where women are being targeted for being alone there. So that is a kind of early signs that Taliban kind of mindset is percolating to the so-called student activists. Is that worrisome? Is that a beginning of some big monster in the making?
We have to differentiate between what is the Taliban, that is a Tulba or the students of Islam. Islam does not teach many of these things, what these fellows are doing. This is really a link up between the intelligence agencies of different countries and people who want to turn Bangladesh into an Islamic state politically. So this is political Islam. This is not religious Islam. And therefore, we have to distinguish between them. The religious Islamic people would not like the name of Islam to be sullied like this, what these people are doing. So therefore, we have to talk to Islamic scholars also all over the world to ensure that they issued fatwas against this kind of behavior which is going on in Bangladesh, because nobody would allow that. And I have lived in several Arab countries and Islamic countries and have interacted with Islamic scholars, and I can tell you that they would be really ashamed at the kind of things which are being done there. And India has to take action. We have to find out partners who would be willing to put the same kind of pressure that which India would like to exercise on Bangladesh to behave responsibly about their own internal populations and about the Indian investments which have been made there. And thirdly, if there are any demands from Bangladesh which are emerging to somehow cause divisions within India, then we have to work against all that very clearly. I have no doubt about it.
Ambassador Shashank, I would like you to particularly throw some light on the role of the students in Dhaka who play bigger role in the movements there. I'm just going to quote one paragraph from Salik's book. When Operation Searchlight was launched to crush the rebellion in Dhaka, he writes that the stiff resistance came from the Dhaka University. He writes, at about 2 a.m., the wireless set in the jeep drew out attention. I was ordered to receive the call. The captain on the other end of the line said that he was facing a lot of resistance from the Iqbal Hall and Jagannath Hall. Meanwhile, a senior staff officer snatched the handset from me and shouted into the mouthpiece, "How long will you take to neutralize the target? 4 hours? Nonsense. What weapons you have? Rocket launcher, recoilless rifles, mortars, and okay, use all of them and ensure complete capture of the area in 2 hours." The campus was delivered in 2 hours, and after that, three pits, 15 meters wide, of fresh corpses were found by this author. The students have been at the forefront of the Bangla nationalism. In about 5 decades, what happened that Islamic identity has asserted on Bangla nationalism?
This has always been a problem of people who go for Islam, that they have a feeling that maybe in the first couple of generations, there will be both cultural aspects and the Islamic aspects, and there will be a melange of the two. But they feel that after 3, 4 generations, they should really become truly Islamic, and the cultural aspects should then be reduced. This is not just for Bangladesh, not for Pakistan. This is worldwide. And that is on the basis of whatever long discussions I have had with many Islamic scholars. They have always said that, look, for example, in Africa, they said, look, you people in Asia behave in a very different way. But in Africa, which are very simple people, our Islamic scholars and the Christian scholars, they go to different villages. Sometimes they are in neighboring villages, converting the people to Islam or Christianity. And we don't mind if in the first few generations they want to maintain their tribal instincts, their tribal lifestyles and things like that can go on. But gradually they have to move and become truly Islamic. And similarly, Christians also, then they also feel that ultimately we are going there to save their souls. So the ultimate savior of their souls would be by becoming a true Islamic person or true Christian. And so I think in Bangladesh also they are facing this thing that they say enough is enough. 1970, you were fighting against the Islamic uh, culture or Islamic rule, which was being perpetrated by the military. But this time it is not by the military. Military has taken the back seat. The interim government has taken the back seat. They have handed over the whole thing to Islamic parties. And though they are not Islamic scholars themselves, but they're Islamic parties. So they are saying that we have to go for true Islam. So the cultural identities or other small local identities have to be submerged within that Islamic identity. And this is a problem which Indonesia faces, Malaysia faces, Turkey has faced, and all these countries which are Islamic, as to what extent they forget about their own identities and go for a pan-Islamic identity. Uh, it has not happened. Arab countries are still having different views among themselves on Islam. They maintain their national identities. What will happen? I think they have perhaps decided, the Islamic State of Khorasan, they have decided that they have to work in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and then gradually into the non-Islamic. The Maldives, of course, becomes number one country for them. And then after these three countries, then they would like to build up the base in India and in Sri Lanka and in Nepal. So I think this is a kind of a thing which is going on a different basis. Like China says that, look, we want to become number one in 2049. You have seen that in Bihar, booklets were found saying that India has to become a truly Islamic country by 2047. So therefore, there are all these kind of trends which are going on there. Only thing is that because India got divided, and Jamaat-e-Islami was not for division of India. It was really Jinnah, the westernized Muslims, they were more for division, because the British and Americans had come to a conclusion that India should never be allowed to link itself with Tashkent area, where communists were being taught principles of communism from the Asian countries. And therefore, they wanted India's partition, and Pakistan came up. And they very soon made sure that Pakistan military took over control of the country, because they were not sure whether Islamic people would be able to do justice to the aspirations of the Western powers, or whether the liberal, Western-oriented Islamic people would be able to do that. So they were all finished off, and military took over power, and military was totally working with them. Now we are finding that now we have come to an era where the Islamic people, Islamic scholars, and the military people, they're again working together. Sometimes one is working in front, the other is behind, but ultimately they want to make sure that as and when Islam is able to take over the whole world, then they are not far behind. And somehow some of them have got this feeling that the ultimate victory has to be in Khorasan. Only then Islam will become a global phenomenon, global power. So I do not know whether I have been able to answer your question, but I think this is a very long drawn kind of a process where we are only there in between, and we have to protect our interests as a country, as our own identity. And we have
So
several partners in Asia. They should be able to
do you
help
see
us.
Bangladesh in turmoil for a very long time, sir? Do you see that this turmoil will persist for say many years now, or do you see it settling down quicker?
I don't know. I think India took certain decisions in 1970, 71. It will again have to take certain decisions in order to bring about stability in this part of South Asia. And we have to find partners. As I said, we have to find partners, talk to China, USA, Russia, Islamic scholars, and many other people to see that really logic and rationalism applies in this part. And we are able to bring about stability and peace rather than continuous turmoil, because that turmoil will not be acceptable to ultimately of us, including we may lose autonomy of action. So we have to make sure as soon as possible.
Right, sir.
So there is a risk of prolonged turmoil in the region, and that would be inimical to India in particular. But Ambassador Shashank, India Out campaign is going on in Bangladesh. India Out campaign was going on in Maldives, and Muhammad Muizu came to power on the basis of India Out campaign only. But since June of this year, there has been a change in diplomatic engagements, and Maldivian Prime President is going to visit India probably next week, and there is a change, and possibly the economic linkage is being explained that Maldives is virtually on the door of a sovereign default, and India is the only country which can steady their economy because tourists mostly go from India to that part of the country. So, Ambassador Shashank, do you think that economy will eventually dominate the current happenings in Bangladesh?
Uh, well, Maldives, it took place because Maldives are relatively small and they depended quite a lot on tourism. I think the main tourists used to come from India, Russia, and Germany. And Russia and Germany are having their own, European countries are having their own problems. And India, since they wanted India Out campaigns, so therefore, I mean, Indians naturally would not like to go there in a place where there's an India Out campaign going on. Now, Bangladesh, I'm not very sure, because you know what happens is there's General Rawat used to say that it's not just a two-front war, we have a 2.5-front war, and Bangladesh can hurt us very badly even within India. And therefore, whatever decisions we take, we have to keep in mind that our internal situation and the external policies have to be worked together and very effectively with great amount of cohesion and speed, because the instability which is going on just to allow long-term turmoil in that area will be of great harm to us, because we are finding that already uh, attempts are being made to ensure that we have seen that drones being used in some parts of northeast, and so which means that things are reaching a boiling point in some parts of northeast, and therefore we have to keep that in mind that it is not Bangladesh alone, but in West Bengal we are finding, in Assam we are finding, in some of the smaller states of northeast we are finding that there is an instability and attempt to carve out a little more autonomous kind of regimes there, which autonomy would only mean greater instability, like we are seeing in Burma, that northern parts of Myanmar where the army rule does not operate. Small groups have taken over control, and they are being supported by all kinds of people from different parts of the world. Now, how does it help us? No, it does not help us. We already have a lot of these this opium cultivation, other drug cultivation in many parts of Northeast. So this will become a very major center for drug production in the world. When Afghanistan was unstable, I was in Pakistan, and Pakistanis used to say, look, sorry, we don't have any expertise in drug refining and drug production. These are all people from outside, international players, who have come and taken over those parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan, border areas, and they control the whole show. And so something like that will happen here, as also it used to happen in the Southeast Asian corridor. So I think we don't want northeast of India to become, or Bangladesh to become the starting point for that kind of a situation to arise in India.
Mr. Singh wants to ask some question.
Uh, Basically, what sir is saying is perfectly right, because I think it's not that it will happen. I think it's already there. The drug problem is very serious already in that border belt, and it has had its impact, and that's what's playing out really over there. And Bangladesh's instability for our national security is, of course, totally a very crucial element without which we cannot survive. But the question is, what really is at India's disposal? What is it that India can do at this stage? I mean, in a real sense, in a practical way, that can help us to, achieve our goals.
Well, we adopted a system of democratic elections whereby we remain in a constant election process. Every 3-4 months, we have some election going on somewhere or the other. So
Yeah.
therefore, our attention of any government is mostly focused on the election requirements. Security, drugs, smuggling of weapons, all other kind of issues with the neighboring countries, they become secondary. So therefore, what I would say is that we must formulate some kind of a crisis management groups, which include not only internal but also external parts, and both military and non-military, and modern technologies like cyber, like space, all these kind of things. They should be brought together, experts in that, and we should tell them that, look, the final position should be given by them. We don't want to have a crisis management group which is led by the prime minister of the country, so that everything is pushed to the prime minister saying, okay, should we allow the plane to get out of Amritsar or not? Prime minister will decide. Now, those are the kind of things where we have. Why do we have all these various experts in different domains? So we must set up these kind of cohesive crisis management groups. We should come up with one very unified recommendation for the top leadership, so that the issue is not left to the top leadership, but a very clear-cut recommendation is given to them. And of course, as I said, that we can't do it on our own. We have to have other partners, and therefore we must find partners, whether on the scholars side, whether on the country sides, and I'm quite sure that we should be able to find several of them. We have our old friends from the on-the-line movement. We have our friendships with the East Asian countries. We have friendships now with Africa and others. So we should try to build up all of this. And then our major, whether adversaries or the partners, can be China, USA, and Russia. So we have to work with them, definitely. And if we have some friends which have latest technologies on civilian or military side, whether Israel or Taiwan or many others, we should take advantage of that also.
And do you feel President Mohammad Yunus is a positive for us or not a positive?
Well, positive in the sense that earlier we thought that Bangladeshis were our friends under Sheikh Hasina. But exactly the feelings which are now boiling over, coming out in the open, they were very much there, just under the surface.
Right.
So therefore, we were being misled 80%. If Sheikh Hasina was misled 100%, we were also misled 80%. So now we can put the blame on her, saying that she did not understand the situation. But did we understand the situation? We also thought that they were the most friendly people for us. And every time all our diplomats would say and speak out saying, look, the friendliest neighbor India has is Bangladesh, without realizing that within a few months that lady would lose her position. And now they are after her life.
Possibly the last friendly neighbor we had. Now that we're totally surrounded by.
So these are permanent interests. We have to take care of our interests.
Yeah.
And in that context, we have to make sure that we should keep on building up our friendly sentiments among the people of the neighborhood. It may be 10% today, maybe 30%, 40%, 50%. The leadership, yes, if it is friendly with us, that's very good. But at the same time, below the leadership, we should also try to see that there are feelings friendly to India and they feel that it is valuable to them, not just
Right.
simply because India is putting some money there.
Right.
Mr. Shashank, but the big challenge is that even the foreign minister, as Jashankar, was asked this, and he was said that we were not certainly not taken aback by the development in Dhaka. We were a bit aware about the happenings there. But given the 50 years of Bangladesh history, when the military rule came in between, democracy was very fragile, a very partisan democracy, one part in jail, another part ruling. How do you deal with such a country? How do you build bridges with the people in other political parties there?
No, that is very difficult, very, very difficult. I mean, we had good relations even with the BNP. I remember when I was the foreign secretary, it was BNP which was in power. And we used to have meetings in the bilateral and other multilateral forums with the BNP leaders, including Begum Zia. But the point is, that is up to some extent, yes, they also need to work with India. But what we wanted to develop, and I think perhaps we felt that we should move as fast as possible to link mainland India with Northeast and to provide the port areas and other things and other connectivity, land connectivity, rail connectivity, canal connectivity through Bangladesh. But I think we always felt earlier at that time when BNP was in power that we have to work together with both Myanmar, with Nepal, with Bhutan, so all the neighboring countries, so that it is not only one country which is helping us, because then there might be India out kind of a campaign will suddenly come up there. But it is that if we don't do it, the next partner will do it for India. So if we are able to go, let's say via Sidway to Northeast, and in the old days there used to be regular shipping links between Myanmar and Calcutta, which went
Yes.
away afterwards. So why can't we rebuild them? So we have to make sure that we have as many links as possible via our eastern neighbors, and we should try to expand the corridor that we have, which this Islamic scholars are now saying that you should finish off this corridor. We should enlarge that corridor in many ways and through all kinds of channels that are possible.
Right. Mr. Singh, do you want to ask something?
No, I'm good. I've asked what I needed.
Mr. Shashank, last question. I've taken a lot of time. Last question is this that we have seen a bit of disengagement on Eastern Ladakh sector. And that is a positive signal that India China things are working out. As you say, that Russia, China, and India should collaborate and cooperate. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval met Vladimir Putin also 2 days back. Do you think that in the coming months, situations would emerge that we will be collaborating more with the Eastern axis, that we can stop the things which are taking place in Bangladesh now?
Well, I can share with you that when I was foreign secretary, we were able to develop with Pakistan the SAFTA free trade area arrangement, also bilateral arrangements, including a kind of an agreement between our two leaders that no part under the administrative control of Pakistan would be used against Indian interests, security interests. So those kind of things were done. So therefore, we have to keep in mind, and when I remember speaking to the senior Pakistani officials, they said that, look, earlier our Western friends used to tell us that talk to India. Don't try to hurt India. Be friendly to India. We never bothered about them. But the surprising thing was that China started telling us, okay, don't hurt India. Try to befriend India. Then we have to listen to them. And all these things which have happened now, in our time in 2004, 2003, they said they're partly because Chinese were insisting that improve relations with India. Therefore, I didn't want to mention in such clear-cut words, but what I'm saying is that you have to find countries which are able to carry significance in their advice and which are followed It's not just the USA telling everybody that, okay, be democratic, be uh, private sector oriented and liberal and all that kind of thing. Nobody bothers about. They say yes, they paid lip service to it. And we have seen how they ran away from Afghanistan, leaving $80 billion worth of armament. So therefore, we have to see that there are other countries which are able to convince their partners with the what a word of advice, etc. they can give. And so we should tell them that this instability in this region would not be in their interest. And BRICS, they are being criticized by Western friends that why are we joining BRICS? Why are we joining SCO? But we are not telling them that, look, why are you continuing with G7? Why are you promoting NATO everywhere when there is peace everywhere? So we have to ensure that our own future progress is not stymied. And we can only progress when there is peace and stability in our neighborhood. So we have to ensure that we find partners who would help us in maintaining that.
So on this note, we will wrap up the discussion. Ambassador Shashank gave us a lot of time and a lot of insights he shared with us about Bangladesh and the future trajectory of the strategic and geostrategic roadmap in the near time. And Mr. Singh also joined us from Chandigarh. Thank you, sir, both of you. Thank you so much for joining the discussion.